learning series with Martha Peet. We'll be talking about Inuit foods. I'm usually in Winnipeg, so Cree, Dakota, Anishinaabe, Métis territory. I'm currently in Toronto, homeland of or territory for Haudenosaunee, Huron-Wendat, Anishinaabe, and Mississauga, Anishinaabe, New Credit. I'll let Martha introduce herself, but just to give a little bit of context, a few years ago when I was at the National Indigenous Diabetes Association, we worked with Martha to put together a booklet on Inuit foods, just to sort of educate and share around Inuit foods, food sovereignty, preservation and advancement of Inuit harvesting culture, heritage, and traditional ways of life, but also, I guess, in a way to promote those foods as a means of type 2 diabetes prevention and management, healthy diet through traditional foods. And yeah, thank you for joining us. And I will let Martha introduce herself, and we'll be showing a variety of pictures and the booklet as well that we worked on, just for some reference. And yeah, take it away, Martha.
Thank you, Jeff. The booklet would not have been possible without Jeff and also Megan and Joshua. It was a team effort. So I was really privileged to be asked to write it. And first of all, I know most of you are English speaking, but I also want to speak in my language in Inuit Niqiit. But whatever I say in English, I will try to say them in Inuit Niqiit. Tamanitun ngahugichi tapwan tarvanator uglumi kablunatot o kamakata mata tamang mid yak taima Inuktitut inugama Inuktitulo o kahira huli ato umaraga. My name is Martha Peet. Martha is my Christian name, and Peet is my married name. However, when I was born in 1950, my parents were still living on the land. Everybody was scattered all over the region of Kitamute, a little community of Talorjuak in the Kitamute region. And when we were born them days, we were given a name, which is usually a relative's name or a name of an elder, or a person they admire. So my name, the one name I had until I was about 6 years old, is Tutkanatiak, which is my grandmother's name. I was given my grandmother's name at birth. When I was about 6 years old, the missionaries came, and then we were told everybody had to have a Christian name. So my mother became Sarah, and my dad's first name became Barney. My brother's name was David. My sister's name Elizabeth, another sister Mary. And I was given the name Martha. My dad chose the name Martha because when the missionaries came, we were given Bible studies. So we got to know the Christian names, and my dad chose the name Martha. And so I became Martha Tutkanatiak. And everybody, all the Inuits still had one name. There were no family names. But the government decided Inuit had to have a family name. So in the 80s, 70s or 80s, the Inuit now had a family name. So my dad had passed away before that was introduced. So but I kept my name, Martha Tutkanatiak, and I always been until I got married. So things were changing in the Western Arctic and the Eastern Arctic of Nunavut. They were way ahead of us because they had sailors come in, explorers come in, say from England or Denmark or wherever. So they were way more modern than the people in the Pitamute region. And I was born in Pitamute. Jeff, you want to show the map of Pitamute region? So in Iqaluit Eastern Arctic, they were exposed to more modern stuff like metal and sewing stuff, materials and that. So they were way ahead of us. I come from the Kitamute region, Talaria and Kitamute. That's in Central Arctic, and we didn't have sailors or explorers come into that region. So we were way behind. We stayed more traditional for many years. And the same thing did happen too in Western Arctic. They had people come in, the ships come in, and they were, so the Eastern Arctic and the Western Arctic were way ahead of the people in the Pitamute region in terms of having, you know, getting blankets, maybe metal, wood, materials of any kind. So we were more traditional for many years. Tayo tumani inulak himalak tangatalorani nunavut me. Tayo ma tapkot ko itong mutant ukiunig amihunig ayakang mitsu tapkot ikalong mutant lo tavani inuvig mutant lo pi hikatak himalak tun having niglo having niglo kayong niglo humituin nang nakaliw tiniglo kaliko niglo hiulio kattahimalak tun taima talurami tau tai huli angutik sa mit kungit ning huli at nukakakit lawin. Thank you, Jeff. So the Hudson's Bay Company was established in Telauea in 1950. 1949, 1950. So Telauea is to make it easier for the Southerners to pronounce it, they wrote it Telauea, but the actual name is Telauea. It means big shield. Big shield because many years ago, before there were guns, Inuit used harpoons to harpoon caribou, so they would pile up rocks quite high on each side of the caribou path. That way, they can hide behind, the hunters can hide behind the rocks and harpoon the caribou as they go by on their path during migration. So there were no guns, so that's the way they hunted the caribou. So here the picture is the Inuit very much like to share food. We share food any way we can. And here we have in this picture lots of caribou meat cut up, fish cut up, and we all get together and we eat outside. This would have been in very early spring. There's lots of sunlight. And people get together and they eat whatever's left over, they take it home. You can see the lady on the left of the picture. She is got a cardboard box, which means she's going to take home when everybody's finished eating together, whatever's left over, the Inuit take them home. So there, nobody's starved or be hungry during them days many years ago, because everybody shared, all the elders, the sick people, everybody was looked after. I remember when my dad had dog team. He had the dogs, he had the sled, and he would go caribou hunting. He'd be gone 2 or 3 weeks at a time, and he always had caribou when he came back, maybe 2 or 3 caribou on the sled. And he would put his sled with all the caribou in the middle of the bay of our community. And the Inuit went down there to the sled to get the caribou meat that they need. And of course, there was always lots left over for our family. But those who can't walk or too sick to go out, I remember as kids, it was our job to deliver those to the people who couldn't walk or were ill. So it was, them days, it was a real community effort. So I was born in a igloo. for the first 7 or 8 years of my life, I lived in an igloo. Igloo my dad had built. And so what we had was a kulak in the igloo. It's a soapstone lamp with kind of a dip in the middle carved in, and that's where the seal blubber oil is held. That was our fuel. And then for the wick, remember that there were no stores. We couldn't buy any material or nothing. Everything we wore was made of skins. So we would, every August, the Arctic cotton blooms, and when the Arctic cotton blooms, we go out picking. It usually blooms in August, and my mother, I remember, as soon as they bloom, she would have a bag made of seal skin, and we would spend the whole day collecting Arctic cotton. Arctic cotton burns so nicely on lamps as a wick, and it lasts a long time. So we would pick enough, because it's only the Arctic cotton is in bloom for a short time. We had to pick enough, like, to last a winter if we can. And so it was really important to pick Arctic cotton every year. Tayo sa mani atataga tuktuliakat takimaluktok pinahakalit at marulonit pingahulonit awlakimalonit tikit takangat tuktut kaksoni Inuit piyak takimaluktot tuktuk nakaning aitlakslating tayo malutay kot anak tulonit pihigong nang itulonit uwagot agraktok bigay himalaktak kuno takay agraktok at taksuting tamang may Inuit nakakatyang na mata nakayong nang na mata. And then when I was about 8 or 9 years old, there, not too far from the community of Taloyoak, was a dew line, distant early warning line. It was, they watch to make sure, there's no enemies coming in. I believe the dew line was American owned. But my dad used to go by dog team to the dew line, and he would scrounge through their garbage dump, and he would bring home pieces of wood, pieces of metal that he can use as a runners for dog, for sled. And any scraps that he felt he can use, and he also was able to get some nails. So when he had enough materials in the community, in our little community of Taloyoak, he built us a shed. It's kind of like a little shed, but to me, it was a big house, but it was a very small house there was enough room for my mom and dad, me, my younger sister, and my brother. And it was like we were living in a really modern house. Um, but we still had the kulak in there because although my dad had managed to buy a tin type pot-bellied stove, it was very light metal, and we could burn paper in there. We have no trees back home, like in the community of Taloga, all across Nunavut. There's no trees, but you might find little tiny trees around southern parts, like maybe Arvet, not too far from Arvet, which is way below the Arctic Circle. So we could only use paper to burn to make the house warm. And we couldn't always get any paper, so we had to go back to our lamp, our kulak that was made of soapstone. Um, what we ate every day, our food consisted of caribou meat, seal meat, fish, and the kind of fish we got were char, trout, cod, and whitefish. We ate rabbits, lots of ptarmigans. We also got ducks. And every morning, before there was a store, Hudson's Bay store, we had to use native plants to use for tea. So we would go collecting these flowers to make tea, to use as tea. So we drank that every day. Maybe I had about 3 cups a day when I was younger. But when Hudson's Bay store was built, at first there was very few items like flour, baking powder, lard, salt, sugar, tobacco for sure. But there were no, when the little honey stores first opened, there were no materials or clothing or anything. That came later. And so, oh yeah, another thing the store brought in was oatmeal, and that became my favorite. Every morning, my mom, when she made me tea, she would put a handful of oatmeal into my cup, and that became my favorite in the mornings. So them days, the Inuit had very healthy way of life. We ate mainly meats during the winter. We ate frozen caribou. We ate fish. during the winter, um, there was not as many choices, but there was always caribou. Um, there was always polar bear. Those animals are there year round. So year round we could eat caribou and polar bear meat, but the polar bear meat couldn't be eaten raw. It had to be boiled. Um, and we got ptarmigans year round and rabbits. So we relied on rabbits and ptarmigans. But them days, even nowadays, ice is too thick, so we can't do any fishing in during the winter. You can if the ice is not so thick, and you can put nets in. But years ago, we didn't have any long-handled chisels or scoops. So we had to do a lot of fishing in the summertime. And the Inuit would catch lots of char during the spring. That's when the char are running along the edges of the ocean. The char spent their summer in the lake, in lakes, big lakes that maybe have a lot of small, tiny shrimp, which there is a lot of in the Arctic. And in the spring, when the river starts to run, they go down into the ocean and feed along the edges of the ocean all summer long. So that's when Inuit, in the early spring, the Inuit would put their nets. They were able to buy nets from the stores. They would place the nets into the great big cracks of the ocean ice, and that's how they caught the the char when they're running in the springtime, and they run along very shallow parts. If you can see the bottom of the ocean there, they run in very shallow parts of the water, feeding along the shores on tiny, tiny shrimp. And so the women, the the men would look after the nets and catch char, and then they're brought onto the land, and then the women usually they get together. The woman doesn't work all by herself, cleaning fish, making dry fish all spring long. They get together outside and they all clean fish together and they're talking and telling stories, and the children would play together. Um, that's how I was born. I was raised. Um, and this still happens. It's like that today. So it's not just many years ago. Inuit still fish like that. and they make lots and lots of dry fish. And they would put them, they used to put them inside the skins or bury them or along around the gravelly area, and then cover them with rocks. And during the winter, they can go there to that spot by dog team and get some dried fish. And same thing with caribou meat. They would bury the caribou meat. It's like a freezer. But sometimes, you know, the wolves will dig in there and get the meat, which happen often. But nowadays they have community freezers, and they can put their fish, their dried fish or caribou meat in there. Um, there's all kinds of birds. The Inuit really like ducks, eider ducks, and they might catch a few and maybe save 4 or 6 ducks in the freezer and eat them during the winter, because birds go up there for the summer and then they go way down to South America for the winter. So ducks, they are a delicacy up there during the spring and summer. The Inuit don't hunt for them when they're up there laying eggs. They only hunt for them when they first arrive, and maybe when they are leaving. But they don't go hunting for the ducks or geese during the when they're laying their eggs. So that was very healthy kind of food is the ducks. Geese once in a while, not so much, because many years ago it used to, you need to cook the geese for quite a long time to make it tender. So we didn't eat so many geese, but ducks are so tender that um, that we hunt for them during the summer, spring, not summer, but during the spring and late fall when they are flying to go south. And another thing that is really good for that was really good for diet up there was eating plants. We ate so many plants. There's kind of like a leaf, maybe about so big. And we would be on our walks and I would pick them and eat them. So we ate a lot. Not so much adults, but the kids ate a lot of those leaves. And so I think as a result, the iceberg lettuce down here, the taste of the iceberg lettuce reminds me of those plants, those leaves that I used to eat. And I really like iceberg lettuce as a result of that. And we would pick some berries, little tiny berries, And what is so good about picking berries and plants for families, especially the women? The women, they could be packing their babies, um, and and a few of them get together and they go for long walks, picking berries, picking plants to eat, and they would bring along um, a kettle, a metal kettle, and into the kettle they would put maybe a couple of cups, nowadays tea bags, and some sugar, um, and some matches, and they would carry that while they're out walking. They could be out all day long. The children follow. The mothers are packing their babies, and they go picking plants or berries, especially berries. They loved berries. And but what would they use for fire to make tea when they're out on the land? We have a plant that that's called heather. Heather grows in, there's a picture of the heather. You can see the little white flowers. We used to eat the little white flowers, but you can see the heather part is green. This does not burn. So what we do is heather, that was last year's growth. It dies and it turns brown, and that can burn very um, very good. It makes a very good fire, the last year's growth. So we don't use green heather because it won't burn. There's too much moisture in the green parts. So we picked last year's heather that has turned brown, and women would collect these brown, the heather that has turned brown, collect a whole bunch of it, and then they would put two rocks side by side and put the kettle on top of it, um, with water in it, a couple of tea bags, and they would burn that, and the tea is so delicious. It's made with heather. As somebody mentioned that they do look like little flowers down here. Yes, they do. They are. We eat them, and the white parts of white flowers, they're delicious. There's kind of very subtle sweetness to them. So there's lots of plants that um, we eat. You can see leaves all around there. And there is a picture of a purple saxifrage that I had sent. Um, those ones, those are so a sweet, natural sweetness to them. Um, we would pick those. We don't pick the roots or anything. We would pick the tops. We leave the roots for the next year's growth like we do with so many other plants. We collect those and eat them, and they have sweetness to them, and they are so delicious. They're beautiful, and they come every year. Um, those are really, I guess they're healthy. I have never seen anybody do a study on Arctic plants because those Arctic plants, you can't get them down here. They only grow up in the Arctic. And I have never seen anybody do a study on their nutritional value to the body. And I've always wanted to know what health benefits they have. I'm sure they're healthy because we ate them and we never got sick or anything. We ate a lot of plants. And so that um, we also pick berries. There's where I come from, which is way up in the Arctic. We don't get crowberries. Um, we get purple saxifrage. We don't get Labrador tea. Um, I drink Labrador tea on regular basis down here because my friend goes picking them every summer and she takes them home and dries them and she supplies me enough to last a year. And um, they're very healthy. Um, so not too many grown-up Inuit eat a lot of plants, but the children eat a lot of plants and leaves and berries and crowberries grow further south. If you know where Kokoloktok is in the Kitangmi region, they do grow there, but they don't grow in Telokuyuak. Maybe they will now with the climate change because it's melting. Um, I believe Inuit had a very healthy diet many years ago. They're very, very healthy. And, but with the stores now carrying everything, whatever you can buy down here, you can pretty well buy up there now because we used to depend on, many years ago, depend on the ship coming in once a year and it brought in 1 year's supply, which was mainly flour, baking powder, lard, ingredients for the bannock, and tea, loose tea leaves, um, and some kerosene to burn on the prime stoves that they sold then. But now those are still brought in once a year, but they have a plane coming every day, and quite often that's how the fresh vegetables get up there. Um, Unfortunately, I think Inuit have become very dependent on southern foods, the vegetables and the fruits. Um, which travels for a long time up to go up there all the way up to the Arctic, and some of them freeze along the way. Um, and there is also a lot of food that is prepared for example, frozen chicken wings with barbecue sauce or which I've tried and it made me sick. But the Inuit have become dependent on those kinds of foods for eating, unfortunately. But we also have to take into consideration that it is very expensive to buy gas for skidoo to go out hunting. The bullets are so expensive to buy 4 tracks or skidoo. It's very expensive. So those kind of costs prevent Inuit from going out on the land. So but they still go caribou hunting, and they share what they can. But what I remember is the Inuit, like my family, my mom would cook, boil over a kuluk seal oil lamp. She would boil caribou meat, and whoever comes to visit, they also eat. And the children are always the first to be fed. And then the adults eat. After eating, the children either go outside to play or play in the house or in a igloo. And then I remember my mom used to make a big pot of tea, big kettle of tea, and we would drink tea and tell stories, especially the women. The men would go either visiting or go outside and fix something on the sled, maybe. Or fixing harnesses and whatever. And the women would stay in the house and they would drink tea and they would eat bannock after supper, after eating meal of maybe cooked caribou, frozen caribou, frozen fish. So it was very sociable way of life many years ago. And because food is so scarce now, people go on the radio nowadays and say, I need a little bit of food. My kids haven't eaten. So that kind of life is pretty well gone because it's too expensive to get food together. So how much time have we got left on, Jeff?
Sorry, Martha, I didn't want to interrupt you. But yeah, do you want to do some questions? We got, I mean, we can go as long as you want, but I don't want to keep you for too long. So
Yes.
we can do some
Anybody have
questions.
any questions?
Yeah, it looks like there's a few in the chat. Are Nunavut berries the same as bake apples? Because that's what they look like in the picture.
Okay. The berries, when I was younger and growing up and everything into my adulthood, I pick them and eat them. But one time, after spending a few years down south, I got curious as to what the berries look like on the inside. Are the flowers that grow in Telauea? So I cut one with a knife right in the middle. It's exactly like an apple. Um, it tastes just like an apple. Um, they're green in the summertime, and during the fall, they get really juicy and they turn red. I'm not exactly sure of its name, but you can get those berries down here. But baked apples, um, we when I was out boating with my husband in Yellowknife, we got on an island and I saw all these orange things. I said to my husband, what are these? He said, those are big apples. And I ate so many. Um, but I do know they grow in around Yellowknife area on the lake, on the islands. But they don't grow that far north. Yes.
I remember you telling me about carrots that grew up there that don't grow anywhere else.
Yes, we have what's called, we used to call them Eskimo carrots. Um, they have beautiful, beautiful yellow flowers on top. Um, and the flowers are all out there, brilliant yellow flowers. And you usually find them not in the damp areas because they have a long root. You find up in the Arctic that all these little flowers that grow up there, they have very short roots and they grow in the lower areas. But the carrots that we used to pick grow on higher areas, like on hills, because the permafrost was further down south, further down. But in the areas where the sun doesn't get to them in the summertime, um, just the plants with the very short roots grow in those because of the permafrost. Um, but this carrot, we would pull it, and it's really long. It can be 12 inches. Some are fatter and shorter in the root. And we would take the tops off and take the soil off with our hands like this. And we ate them as we walk. And they have kind of a sweet, very subtle taste of sweet. And they're white in color. Um, so we used to eat those as we walk on the land, out on the land. But nowadays, women go out, pick a whole bunch and take them home and fry them. So, so those are delicious. Yeah.
Great. Well, I guess we're about done. I was wondering if you want me to show that picture of your grandmother really quickly. You want to talk
Sure.
about that? Yeah.
Yes, I have lots of time.
Okay.
This is a picture of my grandmother, who I was named after. You can see on her hands, she has tattoos. Those lighter parts are tattoos. You can see tattoos on her right arm. You can see tattoos on her face. And the way the Inuit tattooed each other is you get soot, SOOT, soot onto a thread, a needle at the end, and they blacken the thread with soot. And then they go just below the skin and they pull it through. And that's how Inuit tattooed each other many, many years ago. Now that all the tattoos that you see with Inuit nowadays, they're mostly done now by ink, like you do down south. So, and this is my cousin Sarah. She's a year older than me, the one my grandmother is packing. She is now principal of the school. She's the Anglican minister, as well as a school principal back home, back in my community. And here's a picture of Nimilk. Nimilk, my dad and Nimilk's mother were brother and sister. So she's my cousin. You can see she has little braids. That would be her little hair, braided hair would be tied with the caribou sinew. You can see she's wearing all caribou skin clothing. We had no cloths then. She's packing a baby, a little, she's packing a little puppy, a husky puppy. We used to do that when we had no toys. There was no way we could buy toys. There was none. So we played um, uh, using the little tiny puppies as our babies and packing them on our back and pretending to go for a walk or pretending to go fishing. Instead of fishing, because we were not allowed to go on the ice in the springtime, we would go along the edge of the lakes and open the rocks, and there would be little fish, baby fish under them, and we catch them, and we pretend we caught lots of fish. So this is Nimiq. If you can show that lady with a big fur, yes. This woman is wearing, you can also see that she has tattoos. This kind of fur around the parka, the dark part is wolverine. We get wolverines up in the Arctic, but they're hard to catch because they run fast onto the hills that we can't get into. And the outer part, which is lighter color, is wolf skin. And the wolves are very common up there. That's a wolf skin on the outside. And those are used originally to prevent the wind blowing on your face. You can go like this and you can be protected with the fur. So those were originally made to prevent the wind blowing on your face. So this picture would have been taken after the stores were built, because she's wearing a modern material. Mhm. Is there any more questions?
Um, oh, what was your grandmother holding in her hand in that
Oh,
picture? Somebody asked.
can you go back to that?
Yeah.
That the stick part would be made from ivory, and at the end of the stick where an ivory that's carved with a sharp point, and that at the end, um, which looks like sort of like a squid, is either a bone or a part end of a tusk. There's a hole made in the middle, in the flat part, there's a hole made there. And that was our game. That was part of Inuit game, that you swing it, the thread is tied onto the end that she's holding, and it's also tied onto that bigger piece. And we go like this, and we try to get the tip point of that stick into the hole in the middle of that bone or ivory. That was a game we played for many years. Maybe you can show the picture of the wolf, the fox first, further down. This picture that's up right now, I wanted to show you. There was starvation. There was no caribou, no seals, no animals at that time. And Inuits went through starvation. You can see from their clothing that everything that they're wearing is made from caribou skins. And this particular picture, was taken by Richard Harrington. He has a book. One of his books is called Inuit the Life as It Was. He was sent up there to take pictures in the 50s, in 1950, I believe, around that area. And he took pictures, priceless pictures, pictures you can get now. The only picture I have of my dad, because he passed away when I was younger, the only picture I have of my dad was taken by Richard Harrington. So this one was taken during the starvation around Alvet area, Baker Lake area. And the first, no, you can see this guy has come to the tiny store to trade in some furs, Arctic fox furs, and in return he can get some dry goods. Them days when you take your furs into the Hudson's Bay Company, you weren't given cash. Um, you were given credit. And to make it more visible, how much they're giving you for the furs, they had big metal pieces. Maybe that size was worth $20. Smaller one, maybe $10. Smaller one, again, around $5 maybe, and the rest in smallest ones were $1 in value. So uh, so there was no cash exchange for anything, but Inuit would bring in furs, and then in turn they would be buying things like flour and sugar and dry goods like that. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Martha. There's a lot of people in the chat thanking you for sharing today, and that was, they all thought it was great and interesting. So
Yes,
uh
for
yeah,
all those people who thank me, thank you so much. I really enjoyed this, and you made
thank
Jeff, you made it 100 times easier for me. So thank
you're welcome. Yeah, and
you.
thank you for mentioning Megan and Joshua. I should have mentioned them at the beginning, that we for the booklet we contacted Megan Kayak Monteith to do the artwork. She's an awesome Inuk artist out in
Yes,
she lives in Halifax now, but yeah, she's great. And then Joshua is a guy from Puckatawagan in Manitoba, and he did the graphic design for the booklet. So yeah,
yes.
it was an excellent project. So just encourage everyone to check it out on the NIDA page there. And
And
yeah, just that
you were an excellent boss.
I wasn't your boss. But yeah, thanks everyone for attending. We're gonna we recorded it, so we'll put it up on the YouTube and the Lawson page. And thank you again, Martha, so much for sharing everything. We really love it
Thank
and
you.
appreciate it. So
Yeah, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Jeff, and everybody involved in putting this together. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Mhm.
okay, hope
Yeah,
you have a great day and take care,
yes,
everyone.
you too.
Okay, bye bye.
Bye.